Let's connect then with Saugata Bhattacharya, who joins in on the show. Saugata, lovely having you with us as always. Let's just begin by talking about the intent by the government at a time like this. They have taken a fairly bold step, but we have to remember that inflation as well was pegged at an 8-year high in the month of April. So is it sort of a step better late than never, or just a much needed move that had to have been done?
No, I think your analyst, first, thank you for having me on your show. Your analyst described this beautifully. I think he's covered it very, very comprehensively. Obviously, the intent was to cool off inflation a little bit. Every 10% reduction in the pump prices of petrol and diesel leads to about a 20-25 basis point cut, the first round impact, and then assuming pass-throughs into the other commodities, the fuel prices, transport costs, etc., another 20 odd basis points. So he's got it absolutely right. So about 40 to 50 basis point drop in the CPI inflation. But the second round impacts will take a little bit of time. The first round hits it directly. The problem now, something has to give, right? So with inflation coming off, that's a little bit of a positive, but a much more worrisome thing is as your analyst mentioned, an expected increase in borrowings to cover up the deficit. Remember that for the center, this will cost about 1 lakh crores, and for the states, another 10,000 to 15,000 crores. So both from a center and from a state point of view, there is a revenue loss. Of course, the other side is hopefully, fingers crossed, that the growth rates that had been assumed for direct taxes, for GST, etc., in the February budget was fairly moderate. So it's likely that there will be some increase in some of these collections. Plus, the other worry now is all the disinvestment revenue, the dividend revenues. You saw that the RBI has given a fairly low dividend, much lower than what we had expected. So some of this is likely to put some pressure on the fiscal side. So that's the biggest worry now.
Oh, yes, indeed it is. But Saugata, just wanted to understand as to how you see the overall CPI inflation number, which was the big worrying factor, rearing its head time and again. How do you see that easing over the long term with a step like this?
So initially, before this cut, our average CPI forecast for FY23 was 6.9%. Post the April number that came in, we were 6.6, then we had to go up to 6.9. So assuming over the course of the year, as we discussed, that there is a 40 to 50, maybe a little bit more. So that would obviously bring the headline CPI from 6.9 to about 6.4 or 6.3 if the pass-throughs happen. But we are still at a relatively elevated level. Definitely for Q1 and Q2 right up to September, which is the first half of FY23, the CPI is likely to still remain above 6%. Only in H2 is the path likely to start going down.
You know, you had the government as well go ahead and waive customs duty on the import of some of the raw materials. Saugata, at a time when we're looking at the raw material and the input prices scaling nearly 40 to 45%, this move comes in as a huge relief for sectors across the board.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So, I mean, we were just talking about the fuel component. So all the other measures, the import duties, the export duties, etc., is likely to, again, create some problems, some relief for domestic consumers of some of these commodities on which these excise duties have been, the import duties have been changed. But remember, again, so that's another part. But because of the lower imports or the lower exports, some of the other taxes that the government would have got would probably be lower, particularly GST. The GST on high imports that we had been seeing, that will also probably be a little bit lower. So again, the bottom line is that if you're cooling off inflation at some point, there is some other pressure that opens up. And in this case, it will be interest rates, because let's see how markets open today, the bond markets, what they see in terms of the borrowing pressures, exactly as you mentioned. That 1 lakh additional borrowing is probably being speculated upon. So on the growth side, this is good because you consumers will have a little bit extra discretionary incomes from the lower fuel taxes, the lower fuel prices. But on the other hand, the bigger picture, the growth drivers, particularly exports, that is likely to slow down a little bit. So that on the overall side, I think this is good for growth. This is good for the RBI's point of view, the extent of rate increases that they would have to do without the tax cuts is probably now that pressure is a little bit lower. So the fisc and the monetary policy are beginning to work in tandem, which is very, very good for managing the various macroeconomic trade-offs.
Now there is going to be a gap of 1 lakh crore. That 1 lakh crore is something which government will have to raise it from somewhere. The easy way out is you change your borrowing target. If you change the borrowing target, it will have implications on the bond yield, which means while RBI may say, okay, I'm going to be paying less, but I will eventually be paying more. So I will have to increase interest rates, not right now, but the long-term implications would be high. How will this map?
No, so from an RBI point of view, the ability or the need to raise the repo rate very, very sharply is probably now a little bit lower. So on the lower side, on the front end of the yield curve, the short-term interest rates, that pressure is likely to be a little lower, but the yield curve then begins to steepen, as markets say. In other words, the 5-year yield, the 10-year yield, the 15-year, 30-year yields, those begin to go up because of expectations of higher borrowing. And on that front, this is the other thing that the RBI will need to manage. So probably another hike in the CRR, which extracts some of the 5 lakh surplus liquidity that's there in the market. Today, it will be about 4.2 lakhs after the CRR. So 4.2 lakhs, that will probably need to be taken again. And that opens up a little bit of room for the RBI to try to maneuver in terms of bond OMO purchases, etc. Because then about 1.5 lakh crores of liquidity plus all the cash that goes out of the system. So say another 2 lakh crores. You've already seen the first step on the switchbacks. So the switchback into longer term yields. So then this opens up a little bit more space for the RBI to begin to deploy more tools to try to bring the higher end, the longer term interest rates with various with liquidity operations, with OMO operations, etc.
Saugata, really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.